My Gavan and Melanine, and well met indeed. I am Arike Galadirthan, the head of Divide and Conquer version 1, and welcome to the first of two parts detailing the many changes in version 1. This first one will deal with the campaign map. The visuals of this video will likely be reasonably the same. I'll move around the map and stuff and I'll show you certain features, but sometimes it will just be me talking. The second one will entirely be a battle map video, so it will just be looking at the new looks of units and talking a bit about battles. I was going to say something I've forgotten. Yeah, these are basically just the changelog spoken out. So I've gone through the changelog, I've highlighted what's going to affect the campaign map. There are loads of changes that I will not be discussing, that I will be passing over. There's lots of minor stat adjustments I'm not going to mention. There's lots of bug fixes, obviously, I'm not going to mention. This is just essentially the major changes that version 1 brings. But before all of that, I am just going to spend about 2 minutes or so explaining the current bugs with version 1. Yes, it's only been out 2 days, but there's already been like 3 things that have been highlighted. I also just want to talk about a question somebody asked that I feel I should answer in a major video because many of you might not understand. So, we will start with that. But first of all, I did just want to say a massive thank you to you all for our version 0.52, because at the point that I took version 0.52 down off of the internet, these are the download stats we had. I didn't add them together. Hold on, let me grab my calculator. On ModDB, part 1 of version 0.5 got 48,279 unique downloads. When you combine that with the downloads from Mediafire, part 1 was downloaded 64,758 times, which is amazing for a mod, in my opinion. Part 2 was downloaded 56,211 times, so a few more people staying with just part 1 for some reason. Maybe they went through part 1, it took too long, and they were like, oh, I'm not having this, I'll jack out. 53,154 people downloaded part 3, and sadly a massive drop-off, but still respectable. Only 35,156 people downloaded patch 0.52. That probably has something to do with the review on... If any of you like the mod, I would ask that you go onto ModDB and give us a rating and write a comment, because currently the top rating and the top comment on ModDB is one that says, the mod is great, but the patches broke my game. Now that is before 0.5. That review is for version 0.5, so that is a huge misconception now. So if you do like it and you've got a ModDB account, please head over there and give us a rating. Even if your rating is low, by all means, I'm not asking for you to all artificially increase our rating, but if you do like the mod, just give us a reason why and give us a rating, and let's generate some actually modern, up-to-date reviews. It's the problem with having a mod that's been around for 5 years. Right, so those are the stats. So thank you very much all. Our grand total on ModDB was something like 160,000 downloads of all of the parts together, which is phenomenal. If only we charged you all £1, I'd be 160 grand richer. And highly illegal and morally corrupt. But there we are. Right, so on to the bugs of version 1. The major bugs thus far, I say major, are as follows. The settlement of Kamath Bryn. If you don't know where that is, it is the one just to the west of Imladris. Apparently, on the battle map, that settlement is Imladris, which I personally don't like. To me, that's great. That's a tick. That's a bug I can deal with. But I think it's funny, to be honest. But so if you're attacking Kamath Bryn, do beware. It's going to actually be Imladris, which somebody has said is immersion breaking, but piff to you. Piff, posh, pish. Yes, it's annoying, but it's not, at least your game's still running. Secondly, the Khazad-dûm script has a part where you're meant to spread the word to the Iron Hills, to Erebor, and to the Blue Mountains. Now, I did say that once you do these things, you would get to be able to train units from these regions. Unfortunately, the trigger I've used is incorrect, and that does not work. So, if you spread the word, you won't get any units. But it's only a minor little aspect of the Khazad-dûm campaign, so... obviously it's day 1, we have no idea what we're going to do. Whether or not we'll release a patch in like a couple of weeks or so, I very much doubt it. Unless there's any major bugs, these bugs are likely to stay right up until whenever the next version is. I haven't even thought about that. Secondly, if you fight against the Balrog and it crashes, it's because the Balrog is a renowned problem in the mod ever since Third Age 3.2, and this is because of the way the game deals with his animations and the way the game deals with all of his textures. If it crashes, it's just unfortunate, I'm afraid. There's nothing we can do, save from removing the Balrog and just having a standard unit. It's a major problem, and it's the same reason why the Great Spiders have been cut from the game altogether. And also why we highly recommend you always auto-resolve battles against the Ents. The Ents and the Balrog are really broken. They always have been. It's way beyond our control because we don't have that level of skill anymore. Only that level of skill was only really present in the base team, to be honest. And they've long since departed. So, I mean the Third Age team. So the Balrog, if he crashes, just try and find a way to auto-resolve the battle. See if there's a way around it. Finally, the Northern Dunedain. Somebody asked, how do you train their units? Now, how do I get their beacon system? And it is written in quite a few places. Maybe I'll write an ancillary in the game to explain it. But in the heartlands of the Northern Dunedain, you can only train Dunedain units. They come out of a specific barracks building you have to build. Outside of any Northern Dunedain region, you get an alternative barracks building. Now, they have a different UI, so they do look different. And outside of their region is how you get the beacon system. So if you build the second barracks in Enedwaith, Dunland, Rohan, Gondor, Dol Amroth, Harad, Khand, Rand, Dorwinion, Anduin, Dale, Imladris, if you build your barracks in some of the regions here, in the homelands of these factions, you'll train their units. So it's not like you can get Gondor units coming out of Anuminas or Dorwinion units coming out of Amun Sul. No, 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 sir. It's common sense. Basically, apologies if you take offense to that, but it really is. You need to build your building in their regions and you will train their units. That's how it works. So as you expand out, more free people will come to fight for Aragorn. That's the system. Basically, Aragorn is the only hope for Middle-earth, is how he's kind of shown in the books. If he doesn't become king or he doesn't challenge Sauron, then it's pretty much inevitable that Sauron's going to win. So we've given that extra oomph by showing that the Northern Dunedain can train from everywhere. Right, and that's it. So those are the bugs and those are the information features about the game. So let's dive in to the new features. Now this video shouldn't be as long as the battle one. Apologies that 7 minutes have already passed, but those were things I really wanted to talk about. So major changes first of all at this home screen. Well, of course there's the UI basic changes. As you can see, all of the generals have the oval portrait. Breeland are now just called Breeland, no longer Breeland and the Shire. The Dwarves of Erebor and Iron Hills are just called the Dwarves of Erebor, and Thranduil's Realm has been renamed to Woodland Realm, which I think is better. So those are the only real changes here, but the big change to talk about here, because it's the best place to see it, are the victory conditions. Of course, if you've been following my Let's Plays on YouTube, almost everything I'm going to talk about you will already know if you've been watching them all, so I apologise for that. But this should just be a gathering of them all. But anyway, the victory conditions have changed. The victory conditions have changed for everyone. If you play as Mordor, the Orcs of the Misty Mountains, Enedwaith, and Khand, I believe. Is it Khand? Did I make it Khand? Yes. If you play as one of those four factions, your victory conditions are really open. They allow you to play however you want. So if you want to play as Mordor and you want to be ultimate evil, fight absolutely everyone, you can. You're not restricted anymore. You don't have to defeat anyone. You just have to hold half the map. Or just less than half the map. There are 200 regions and there's 80 to get. So that's the basis behind those. They give you freedom now. You can play them good or bad or ultra bad. It's up to you. You can fight anyone that you want. You can go anywhere you want. You just have to hold your capital and take a certain amount of regions. For everyone else, they've also been streamlined. So you don't have a huge list of regions you need anymore. That's gone because you wouldn't need that. For example, for Gondor to win, they just need to defeat Mordor. They wouldn't need to also own all of Mordor. And we follow that kind of path. So no longer do you have a long slew of victory conditions. You simply have to defeat X, Y, Z and hold the capital of the people you need to defeat. So if your victory conditions, for example, Dol Amroth, they've got to destroy Harad and Umbar, so they've got to take Umbar itself and Finabel, which is the capital of Harad. And you also always have to hold your own capital. So there's changes to the victory conditions. So that's everything to talk about at this stage. Let's play as the Shadow of Mirkwood and see the campaign through their eyes, because they've got a change that I can talk about. But I'm going to go down the list. I've printed off the, because I'm very organised, I've printed off the changelog and I've highlighted what I'm going to talk about. So it is in chronological order. So the first things we're going to talk about are things that happened well over a year ago. So we're going way back, way back. But I'll toggle Fog of War first of all, and then we'll roam around the map. Now, as I say, I apologise, the visuals of this are just going to be the campaign map. They're going to be the campaign map. There's going to be no end turns. There's going to be barely any movement. It is just a discussion of what you can expect. But it should at least give you some information. I'll try and be quick as well, so I'll try and scoot through them all. So, first of all, Umbar. Many of you may have known from the Umbar campaign I did that crashed, unfortunately, but Umbar now gets something called the Slave Camp. And if you play as Umbar, you can then build this slave camp in the lands of Harad, Gondor, Dol Amroth, Mordor, Rohan, and Enid Wyeth. I don't know if it's Rohan, actually, but I can't recall. And this slave camp allows you to train units from those factions. Essentially, you're enslaving their men and forcing them to fight for you. It's a bit tenuous, but it adds a really cool feature to an otherwise dull campaign that is Umbar. Obviously, Umbar are very low down. They're trapped. They don't really have anywhere to go. The campaign is really easy because your heartland's never threatened unless you turn on Harad. And it adds an incentive to now do that. And it adds an incentive to spread out, stretch out, and enslave everywhere. And it also comes because the Black Numenorians who Umbar are based on were very into their enslaving. So it's a link to that. Additionally, as Umbar, you can build the Canned Suppression Camp, which is exactly the same thing, but it's a unique one. It's a unique one for Canned that run Mordor, Gondor, Dol Amroth, Harad, and Umbar now all can train, and it allows you to train units from Canned at the expense of major public unrest. But you can only build them in Candish regions, and it lets you train almost the entire roster of Canned, but your settlement will hate you. To offset this, Umbar can now train no cavalry at all unless you build the slave camp. So your cavalry is going to come from Harad, from Dol Amroth, and from Rohan. Otherwise, you do not get cavalry. So unless you expand, you'll never have cavalry, and it adds a nice little layer of difficulty to them. Additionally, if you play as Umbar, you can train Haradrim archers and spearmen from your town hall as well, just as a nod to the fact that Umbar technically is controlled by Haradrim by the Third Age, and a small section of them are Corsairs. Okay, so we move up. Enid Wyeth have been increased as a naval power, and they now get the second level of the port, the second tier of the port, which just allows them to train boats a bit faster and train more boats to keep up with Lyndon. Now we jump back over to Canned. This is going to jump around, I'm afraid, so stick with it. But for Canned had a unique system whereby you could only get one of their 4 elite units per town. So there are 2 foot units and there are 2 cavalry units. They're all called Brotherhood of the X. Sword, lance, bow, and axe are the 4. And the lance and the bow are both mounted. And you can only get one of the 4 per town. But now you can get one of either foot or mounted per town. So you can either have one of the sword or the axe, so 1 swordman or 1 axeman on the ground, and 1 cavalry. So you can now get 2 elites per town. But you can still only get 1 of each. You have to choose. And it's still tied to the guilds. You have to get Horse Breeders Guild, and then either choose which brotherhood you want to build, lance or bow. And on the ground you can just choose, I believe. Additionally, speaking of the Northern Dunedain, I should stop saying additionally really. Speaking of the Northern Dunedain expansion system, it has been tidied up a bit. The regions that you can get actual Northern Dunedain mainstream units in has been expanded and made to fit the old borders of Arnor. And the Ruidour units come out of the Dunedain barracks, not the militia barracks, because it's a link to their past, really. Okay, now major change are invasions, and this is a big long list, and we don't really have anything to look at, so let's go and look at Minas Tirith, because that's one of my favourite battle models. The invasions. The following settlements are no longer targets at all. You cannot select them for invasions, and that's West and East Osgiliath, Caer Andros, and Caras Falathrim, the southern region of Dorwinion. However, so these 4 have gone. They are no longer invasion targets. Along with them, is also Edoras and the Hornburg, Helm's Deep. Neither of these are invasion targets. So if Gondor is going to be invaded, it will be Minas Tirith or Pelargir, and if Rohan cannot be invaded anymore. Rohan have it hard enough already, and they weren't listening to us. It kept invading Edoras, so we just cut it out. We just removed it. Dealt with the problem the old-fashioned way. Or the harsh way, you might say. But added to the list are the following. The Haradrim settlement of Gobel Mirlond, which is just down here. The Umbarim settlements of Khaldun and Ardumir. Oibamari in Khand has been added. the Morannon. Alright, I'm just going to list these rather than move around the map. So are you ready? So, the Morannon, which is Minas Morgul. The Morannon, sorry, which is the Black Gate. Minas Morgul, Barad-dûr, Lest and Elgire from Run, Sant-Anwy and Carasant from Dorwinion, the two in Dorwinion. Esgaroth, and I used to call it Cirrig Gathol, but I don't think it is anymore. Oh, it is. Cirrig Gathol. Thranduil's Halls, Torfilin, the other settlement in the wood. Dane's Halls, Gundabad, Zagkala, Framsburg, Aldburg in the fold. So Rohan has been added, sorry. Rohan has been added, but it's Aldburg. Alkford. Oh, Helm's Deep has been added. So Edoras was removed. Helm's Deep was added. Helm's Deep was added, me old mucker. Aldburg in the fold. Alkford, the capital of Enedwaith. Lond Dare, Dunlarak, the capital of Dunland. Southern Tharbad. Austin Ethil. Shadoon, the Orc settlement just here. Forn Osterrine, Anuminas, Hobbiton, Amun Sul, and Lond Arthuran, which is the settlement south of Mithlond. Now, if you're wondering why a lot of evil settlements have been added, it's obviously Mordor won't call an invasion on itself, but they can call an invasion on a settlement once you take it. So it should add, as a human AI good player expands around the map, it should add some interesting new invasion targets. That's the plan. So hopefully you'll see that in your games. Alright, a couple of terrain fixes. The first is that the battle maps outside of Edoras, the two bridges, are now playable. They're no longer sheer sides and you can't cross the river. You can now cross the river and it's a normal bridge battle map. So they've been edited and fixed. Somewhere else, another battle map was edited and fixed by myself, but I can't remember which one, I'm afraid. I smoothed the edges of the valley in Imladris as well, which allows for battles to be slightly nicer, but nothing major. Right, Kumul is no longer locked, although he was only ever locked in our test build and then unlocked again about half a year later, so that won't matter to you anyway, but Kumul can run anywhere. And we've attempted to evade the regicide feature by, if Dol Guldur is played as the AI, a family member is spawned up here, which is an impassable area. He's locked, he doesn't gain anything, and that should stop Dol Guldur being killed off by just killing their leaders. Because they suffered amazingly from regicide, and it was really frustrating. So we tried to edit it just for them. Right, the big change as well, many of you will have seen, because I cocked up a couple of save games by adding this in, but the rivers have been made sailable. So as you can see, all of the ports have been pulled away from the river in an attempt to allow boats to get around them. And they can. I've tested this extensively. So you can now sail all the way from Esgaroth right down to the Sea of Run. To go along with that, Dorwinion, Rune, and Dale can now all train the first level boat to allow them to ship troops up and down the River Running and around the Sea of Run. So you can train one type of ship here for these factions. And most other factions have had boats removed, as many people have discussed, and the only people that really get boats now are Umbar, Harad, Dol Amroth, Enedwaith, and Linden. Everyone else has to train mercenary boats. Another terrain fix is Caer Andros. As you can see, I removed the ocean on the right-hand side and put in a standard river crossing. Now it looks a bit hashed and attacked, but it saves so many fixes. It solves so many bugs. You just could not fight here. Basically, it would crash every time. So it solved that. So that's a good little fix. And I saw some discussion on Total War Center maybe, or YouTube essentially, about the Great Spiders. The Great Spiders were cut, and they will never, whilst I control DaC, they will never return. They crashed 3 out of 4 battles. Why people want to put themselves through that, I don't know. But the Great Spiders were the biggest problem, far bigger than even the Ents or the Balrog. They crashed so much. So they are gone. There's no trace of them left. There was a bug fix where a general had a Great Spider portrait, even though he was a human. That's been fixed. And the spiders are gone, and they will not come back. So if you like the spiders, then you'll have to go and play PCP, I'm afraid. Okay, minor name changes. The Orc camp has been renamed to Urk Estelad, and the Sindarin aficionados amongst you will know that that literally means Orc camp, but in Sindarin. Gobel and Calamon, the capital of Harad, has been named Finabel, which is the Sindarin equivalent of Gobel and Calamon. It's because Gobel is Sindarin and Ancalamon is Quenya, and the two are never joined together in that fashion, and I didn't like that. So Ancalamon means brightest or bright, and Fine is the Sindarin equivalent, and that's how it would actually say. So it's Bright Town or Bright City, so it's Finabel. And also Nindad Estelad, because it was a real cluster F. It was a difficult word to say because there were accents and circumflexes all over the place, and it's been renamed to Tirathoros. Additionally, Theland has been given a port and its region slightly expanded, and Northern Tharbad has a port with the introduction of the wider rivers. Northern Tharbad has a port just next to it there. The Northern Dunedain have been added to the generic list to the Dunedain list of the Palantir advances. So if you take a Palantir, you get the Dunedain bonuses, not the Northmen bonuses. And if anybody takes Isengard, the lumber camp will now give a positive benefit to you if you're playing as an evil faction or the dwarves, and a negative benefit to you if you're playing as the humans. It will give you a benefit either way, but it will give negatives as well for the humans and elves. The AI also now gets some much better law bonuses in their towns and cities so that they will rebel less. So it counters that. And one of the most fun things, a lot of forts have been added to the map here and there. And they've been added to strategically important locations rather than just willy-nilly. So there's a couple added like there, for example, at the mouth of the Anduin. There's one either side now, so you can hold out there. And it gives you that area to hold down, a checkpoint to reside in until the battle changes. Until you need the troops, because obviously you get 4 free upkeep per fort. Additionally, a few forts have been given the Mesoamerican look, which is this one, these here, where the orcs wouldn't build a great stone structure, would they? It looks like a knightly fort. They'd build a crappy wooden thing, and it reflects that. And like in the far north up here, there's a fort, and it follows that same pattern. The bonuses that the AI get to cheaper buildings and free trade in all their settlements are gone. I felt that they were unnecessary, and all they did was aid the stack spam. And the AI is strong enough as it is already, so they've lost all of they don't get cheaper buildings anymore, so no longer will you be massively outclassed. They'll still fight against you, and it's still a challenge for some factions. Indeed, some factions it's nigh on impossible, but the AI doesn't get the cheating bonuses as much anymore. Okay, and the big one is the overhaul to the custom bodyguards. As many of you saw, Gleowine in my Anduin campaign was massively overpowered, and as almost all of you know, you could pretty much win the whole Dol Amroth campaign with Adrahil and Imrahil alone. So there are no longer custom cavalry bodyguards. The only remaining generals who have a custom unit as their bodyguard, and it's a cavalry general, are Helluin of Pinnith Gellin, because he gets Pinnith Gellin cavalry, and a few Candish units because they get a few Candish cavalry style. Otherwise, almost everyone else gets the stock bodyguard who have been reduced in size. So, for example, the Dol Amroth bodyguard is like 18 men, the Rohan bodyguard is 25, something like that. So the cavalry has been massively reduced, so it's less viable to go on what the community has dubbed the bodyguard rush or general rush. And this simply means putting all of your generals into one army and wiping out your nearest enemy at the beginning of the game. That's less viable now. A lot of generals have been given foot units to counter this as well, so there's less cavalry bodyguards. Okay, a big change is to An Karagmir. An Karagmir has been moved from the edge of Harad, where it used to reside, all the way down to here. It's been given a garrison of somebody on ModDB discovered that has Mumakil in it in an attempt to counter the human player getting it that early. Unfortunately, it does mean the AI struggles to take it, but that is by the by. It's still one of the wealthiest provinces. But in an attempt to counter that as well, as you can see, the borders have been edited. So the borders of the regions above now encompass the mountain ranges. So that An Karagmir is now just the lowlands beyond. Obviously, it does have an interesting little look, but I'm really not that bothered about that. Almost every other region forms to a pattern of, like, they're all vaguely square or circular in shape. So I quite like this oddity. And it gives a few more resources to the regions above rather than to An Karagmir, which weakens the wealth overpoweredness that was An Karagmir. The OP wealth of An Karagmir. So a big change there in the south. It affects Harad, but it's not the biggest change to Harad, as you shall soon see. We skip over. Okay, Dunland and Ennard Wythe. If you play as Dunland and Ennard Wythe and you unite the clans, then you'll be able to train units from the faction you defeated. So if you play as Dunland and you unite all of Ennard Wythe, then you'll be able to train some Ennard Wythian units. Anywhere. They'll be able to train all over the map. There's a few that are specific, but mostly they're just a few extra additions and you can train them all over. Additionally, if you play as Ennard Wythe and you attack Dunland, you get the same thing. This was shown in my Ennard Wythe campaign. Toward the end, when we fought Linden, we had a load of Dunland units with us. The units that you can get attempt to plug some holes in each other's roster, because by the time you've united the clans, you've pretty much won the campaign, so it's no longer about a challenge anymore, it's now about just winning, and it gives you a few extras, and it just makes it a little bit fun. It's nice to play for 100 turns with all these units that you're used to, and then suddenly get a load of new units. It just adds some extra flavour, I think, and it's a good way to increase campaign enjoyability. Is that a word? Enjoyability? I don't know. Okay, one of the biggest changes with version 1 is the Haradrim stat overhaul. Harad are no longer a stack spam faction. Instead, they are now an uber aggressive faction, but at the cost of armor. So their armor has been significantly reduced, and this is correct. The Haradrim are tribesmen. They're cloth-wearing rebels, basically. And but they're very, very aggressive. So they're now a lot faster. Like, they actually move faster than most other enemies. They attack faster than most other enemies. They have a higher attack and a higher charge than most others. So whereas Gondor are a defensive human faction, Dol Amroth are an elite human faction. Like, their strength is in their elites. Rohan obviously are a cavalry human faction. Harad are now an aggressive human faction. That's their feature. The stat that decides auto-resolves has also been edited for Harad, so that they're strong in the auto-resolve. And it should see them do very, very well in the south now. That's the plan, anyway. Dale and Dornan gets boats, I've already said about that. Yeah, Dol Guldur, the whole reason why I actually started as Dol Guldur. In the fort up to the northeast just here, along with Agandaur, Hunvorn and Morholt of Angmar, you get Ulairon. Ulairon is a wraith. His name is Ulairon the Farseer, but like Hunvorn, he is a wraith, and he has the same image as Agandaur, as you can see, but he has the glowing eyes of death, which I like a lot. So he's pretty cool. He has Castellans of Dol Guldur because he essentially is a Castellan of Dol Guldur. So you get him there. Just as a total minor side, and I'll say it in the Angmar video as well, but I asked who was Agandaur and Ulairon based on, and the only person that got it right was Garrus Vakarian, as this is Angbor the Fearless's model from Gondor. He's not based on... A load of you said that he was based on a unit from another mod, and it's not. It's Angbor the Fearless, edited with the Dark Numenorian armor, the cavalry bodyguard that the Nazgul get, their armor style, edited onto the battle model, or the strategy model of Angbor of Gondor. So that's who he was. So well done, Garrus Vakarian. You got it right. I believe there are two Garrus Vakarians, and one might have a spelling naming wrong, but the one where Hummingbird said correct, you're the one who got it correct. The auto-resolve has also been adjusted so that it favours overwhelming numbers. So if you're greater than 2 to 1 in your favour, the auto-resolve will reflect that, and you'll have a much greater chance of winning. Additionally, Saruman is no longer locked as the AI, so you'll see him roaming around now, and this is because their regicide script has essentially been countered, and they don't die as much. When a faction leader dies, you get a message that tells you, and they now accurately reflect the leader's title. So, for example, it used to tell you, like, if the leader of Khand died, it would say, the king of Khand is dead. But he's not a king, he's a Khan. So it's changed to the Khan of Khand is dead. And for example, in Alkfud, he's not a king either. In Enedwaith, he's the Moot Chieftain. And it now says the Moot Chieftain of Enedwaith is dead. So the leader message bug reflects that there. Another big change, which is kind of battle side really, but we'll talk about it here, are that stakes. The ability to deploy stakes has been removed from all low-tier archers, and it's now a medium tier and up trait only. So you will see very few stakes in the pre-barracks event, which means that if you're a cavalry faction, before the barracks event is your best chance to get out there and do some damage. However, to counter the stakes, all spearmen, whether they're the lowliest spearmen with just a pole or the greatest spearmen in full battle regalia, they're all now significantly better against cavalry. So spearmen now perform their role a lot better. This is offset though, because by increasing their skill against cavalry, it decreases their skill against infantry. So spearmen are now less defensive against infantry, and they're more specific to cavalry killing. So do bear that in mind. Minor side note about Enedwaith and Dunland, the requirements to unite the clans is now written. If you hold Enedwaith, if you play as Enedwaith, it's written in the clan hall, the Great Clan Hall, which is found in Alkford. And if you play as Dunland, the requirements are written in an auxiliary that your leader has called the Wooden Crown of Dunland, or just the Wooden Crown. So you can, if you're not sure why it hasn't fired, because apologies, I'm going to moan for a bit, but a lot of people used to say to me, oh, I've united all of Enid-Wythe, but the Unite the Clan script hasn't fired. It's like, it's because you haven't united all of Enid-Wythe, have you? The message at the very beginning of the game does tell you exactly what you need to take, but obviously people don't read, so people would always come and ask. But now if you're unsure, head to your capital or head to your faction leader if you're Dunland, and it tells you exactly which settlement. I've even written the settlement's name. Oh, I think I've written the region name, so you have to at least do some investigation. But to find out the region name, another thing that some people didn't know, if you just right-click on a region and hold it down, it will tell you the region name. So there's Kyril, Lugia, Southern Dunland, Northern Dunland, Caladir, Southern Fërdor, Eregion, they're all written there, so that's how you find out. Okay, version 1's major change, and the biggest thing that you will all know, because most of you have already played it, is the Khazad-dûm campaign. It is finally working. And to go along with the fact that it's working, we added the 2 Khazad-dûms. So far, there's been very few problems. As I say, the only issue I spoke of at the beginning was the Balrog. Otherwise, the Khazad-dûm campaign works. The Mirkwood route is slightly harder than the Anduin route, and they both culminate in a battle with the Balrog at the end, around turn 80 or something like that. So the Khazad-dûm campaign is in the game. Keeping with the dwarves, siege equipment game-wide has been increased in cost, increased in upkeep cost, and decreased in recruitment priority. So you should see less armies where half the army is made up of siege equipment. I'm looking at Ered Luin here, of course, because they bloody love siege equipment for some reason. So we've increased the upkeep and decreased the recruitment priority. So hopefully there should be less siege equipment dotted around. Speaking of trying to counter Isengard's regicide, Saruman is now only 19 years of age, so he should die way less. There are 4 turns per year. Characters don't start dying until they're around 120, which gives him 100 years, which is 400 turns, until he should die of old age. So ideally, you should have won or lost the campaign before Saruman dies. So it counters that. And as an interesting little side note, in the files, to make sure that their family's all connected, Lurtz is now the father of Ugluk, and he's now 42, and Ugluk is now like 17 or something. Minor bug fix, Rohan and Dol Guldur now need quite a few more regions before the message pops up to say that they've expanded, which is a minor one again. And the Misty Mountains now have a family tree, and they have some pretty cool orc-looking wife and child pictures that I found on the web. There will be a bug with them, though. When a bride presents itself, it will probably be the dwarven image again, but that's by the by. Right, so a few name changes, as I said at the beginning. Thranduil's Realm to Woodland Realm. The dismounted earls, as many of you know, I hate calling something dismounted X. The dismounted earls are now called barons, and the mounted ones are just called earls. So your 2 elite units are earls and barons, which I think is cool. Some of you may hate. There we are. 2 Khazad-dûm settlements. Agandur, I've talked about Agandau. You can, if you watch my Angmar version 1 episode, the first 5 to 10 minutes covers what Agandau, Hoonvorn, and Morholt look like, so you can have a look at those. Thorin's Halls now is actually Leo's Thorin's Halls from his mod. It's quite a cool settlement. There is a bug that all of the textures are black. That'll be fixed whenever we, in a future, whatever. So that is an issue at the moment, but at least Thorin's Halls is a custom battle model. It's just that the walls are all black. Another major change is, as some of you may have noticed already, the region of Naburka, which used to reside here in a pretty useless region, has been moved to this island, and it's now called the Isle of Nabur, with Naburka as the town. It's given to run in the turn 1 auto invasion, and it should just give them a bit of extra strength. And it's a nice little addition now that you can train boats. It gives you somewhere to go, basically. Many thanks to El Monstero for his input there, and the addition of that. Tirathoros and Barad-Han can no longer be invaded by the Umbar Corsair script, and this stops Umbar blocking Harad and Khand out, basically, so that's good. Khand and Gondor now start at war with each other at the start of the game, and their relations are set to basically as low as they can go, so they hate each other. And Khand take Imlad Khanan in the turn 1 auto expansion, so Khand and Harad now both come up from the south to attack. If you play as Isengard again, I probably should have done this by faction really, but that would have taken even more time. But if you play as Isengard, apologies. If you play as Isengard, at turn 1, a message will pop up to tell you all the changes about the ring script. Sorry. So at turn 1, there'll be a message, and it's called "Find the Ring" or "A Simple Ring" or something like that. I wrote the whole message, but I can't remember it already. And it tells you exactly what to do. It tells you that if Saruman dies, you can't get the ring. Again, I kind of thought that was common sense, but That's by the by. Saruman has to be alive, so if you lose him in a battle, you can't get the ring. If he dies of old age, if somehow you've made it to the 500th turn and you still haven't got the ring, then really you should have just hurried up. But it explains all of that in the message. So at turn 1 with Isengard now, there is a message that tells you about the ring. And finally, the final thing to discuss is that, not discuss, just tell you, is that Khazad-dûm are no longer passive. So Khazad-dûm will now come out and about from their lands. They don't do it till about turn 80 or so, so they're kind of still passive. But they will eventually start trekking out and doing stuff and doing some damage. So there we are. Those are the major changes to the campaign side of the game. Nowhere near as interesting as the battle changes, as you'll see. Sorry, I'm hiccuping like a boss. There's a lot of visual changes in the battle map. That video will come up tomorrow. It will probably be an awful lot longer, I'm afraid, so you're going to want to click through. Consider potentially breaking it down in the comments section with when we look at who. But I probably will, in fact, actually, because some of you won't be interested in like what Ered Luin looked like or the names of Ered Luin, but you might be interested in another. So I probably will break it down in the comments. But that's been the campaign overhaul. So those are all the changes to the campaign. So I do hope you enjoyed those. I do hope you enjoyed the continuation of the Khazad-dûm campaign this morning as well. And the start of the Woodland Realm campaign yesterday. And indeed, I hope you're all enjoying version 1. So until we speak again, dear friends, Navar Neden Pedibad Melonin, and farewell.